What makes an indie comic great? Is it the artwork that stops you cold? The writing that stays with you long after the page? Maybe it's the creative team, the cultural impact, or the tragedy behind the pages. In this spotlight, we're shining a light on 25 indie comics that stand tall for all the right and sometimes unexpected reasons. We'll break down the market value, CGC census numbers, and why these books still hit home. This is the Top 25 Indie Comics Spotlight. Creator Spotlight this week. We're going to be going over the top 25 indie comics. One of the things I'm going to do is notice that it says go collect there is that I'm going to put an article and go collect in regards to these 25. So you will be seeing that article just like you will see the article for the iconic comics covers. I already did it, but I still got to do some more information. But before we get to look at our honorable mentions, since I brought Scotty up here, Scotty.
Yeah.
What to you makes a great indie comic?
What to me? I like a great cartoonist that can really bring a story to life. I like good storytelling as well. I don't know, man. I like something a little on the taboo side.
Shane, I'm asking you the same question.
You know, what I love about indie comics is all of the stuff that you can't seem to find in the big two, like the main publishers, where you get creators that can push the limits, really get their story across, whether it's in one issue or 20 issues, and have a character that develops and changes and has things happen to them, and goes along with some really great art, like Scotty was saying. I'm a sucker for that. Like, I know Scotty and I both are huge Rook Exodus fans.
Yeah,
and
great book,
great story, cool concept, and wicked art. I mean, you don't seem to get that much anymore with DC or Marvel.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. One of the things I will say that makes a great indie comics is it's no holds bar. It is pretty much whatever the creator wants to do with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They could do whatever they want. If they want to kill a character mid-story, they could kill off a character mid-story. If they want to do a superhero story, they could do a superhero story. Or they could flip that superhero story in some way. Or they could do something where it's completely off what we know as traditional superhero comics and not even superhero comics. They're just storytellers, fantasy stories. They could be real life. It could pretty much be whatever the creator wants to do because their hands are no longer tied. And that to me is what makes a great indie comic. A great indie comic is everything you're looking for in storytelling, and really it's literature. That's what it is to me. It's something that you're proud of. It's something that people will talk about years in. Stuff that, may not all. This list is not all for me. I'll tell you right now. There are books in this list that I wouldn't care for, but you know what? There's significant value to it. There's importance to it, and that's why you have to talk about it. And there are some books here that I've read. I haven't read them all, but I know a lot about a lot of these books that are extremely important. So let's first talk about our honorable mentions. And before I show you that list, an honorable mention to me is a book that has the flavors of an indie comic, but they really weren't indie comics. So the four that I picked were the following: Sandman Masters of Dreams, which is a 75-issue run that Neil Gaiman did with tremendous artists. Sam Keefe was one of the first artists. Dave McKean did the covers, which were gorgeous. Preacher, which was Garth Ennis, Steve Dillon, with art by I'm trying to remember, Glenn Fabry, right? He used to do the artwork. Another one that was really cool was 100 Bullets. A lot of people don't remember 100 Bullets as much, but 100 Bullets was such a cool story by oh my god, the name's escaping me. I know Rizzo did the art, Edward Rizzo, but who Brian Azzarelli. He was the writer. 100 Bullets. The concept behind 100 Bullets was so great. On 100, you have a gun. It has 100 bullets that are untraceable, and you could do whatever you want with them. Nothing will happen. You would not do it. And then finally, what really kicked off the Miller world, Kick-Ass, which a lot of people don't know, started as within the Marvel brand, like Icon. All of these, the other three were vertical titles, which are part of DC, and Preacher and 100 Bullets was set in a different universe. Sandman started within the DC universe, but kind of like escaped from it, and it was allowed to be its own thing with really pretty quickly too. Like the first 7 issues where you had Constantine involved, Martian Manhunter. There was even an issue with Batman in it, with Sandman. Anyway, let me go to you guys. Shane, your take on these 4.
So I know the most about the bookend ones. I have the whole Sandman run. I have the absolutes. I've got trades. I've watched the series. I thought it was great when it came out. It was super fun. If you're looking for a little sleeper treat, try to find Captain Atom 42. Good luck. And Kick-Ass, I just thought it was a really cool book. And you're right, it kind of started that whole Millar world thing, and it was just a cool concept, like kind of before the boys had a lot of attention and all that was there. So it's fun.
Scotty, what's your take on these 4?
Honestly, I'm only really familiar with Preacher. That's the only one that I own, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. It was a gift from a friend, so I haven't read any of these yet.
Oh, really? Well, yeah. I think you're gonna love Preacher. Garth Ennis.
I like Garth Ennis' writing. He's
dark
brutal,
humor. So, writer of The Boys.
Yeah.
And now that you mentioned The Boys, Shane, The Boys was originally a Wildstorm product, which was actually an imprint of DC. I didn't get a chance to put it on this list because it is a creator-owned project, and I think it belongs on this list. My honest opinion, belongs on this list, especially with its popularity today. We're going to go through a chronological order from the time it first came out all the way to the most recent book. So we're going to leave it that way. And you be the judge of yourself. You know what I mean? Leave it in the comments. Let me know which books either I missed out or which books from this list that you liked and you love. I love a lot of these books on this list. Sandman, to me, I read it late on because it was my best friend was really into Sandman, and I kind of got into it afterwards. I read a lot of the volumes. I'm so looking forward to season 2. I'm upset about it being a final season because there's so much story in Sandman that it's like, oh man, you threw that up. Preacher, I didn't get into Preacher because of the whole spirituality part to it.
Yeah.
But Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon, their work on Punisher is what led to Preacher. So what they did in Punisher, you got to see Preacher because there's a lot of that, and that story is crazy. 100 Bullets is another one that's really good, and of course Kick-Ass. I love Kick-Ass. I think that was a great story, and it continues to be. All right, let's go ahead and start it off with the first book. This one is Zap Comics #1. This book came out in 1997. Print mint. A high sale of this book is $11,400. That was in June 30th of 2022. Last sale of this book was $1,680, and that was in November of 2023. The raw copies are going for about $30 at a good, while 7.0 is that $1,680. There's currently 149 copies in the census. This is the first appearance of Mr. Natural. First printing states printed by Charles Pimmel on the back cover, and is credited for birthing the adult theme independently published comic genre. We're going to start with the 60s here because we're really going to look at the underground scene here.
Yeah.
There's other books, but we can't really, it's hard to quantify them as indie at that time. I think the birth of indie really started here. Robert Crumb and the rest. So I'm going to go with you, Scotty, because I know this is your wheelhouse. So talk to me.
Of course, man. Zap Comics, this is an amazing way to start the list. And I'm glad we're not counting down because this would definitely have to be at the top for me anyways. But this started, it's got it dated at 67. I think it's early 68, February of 68, but this was originally created to showcase the awesome artwork of cartoonist Robert Crumb. And this series ran forever. I can't remember exactly how many years, but it ran for 40 something years, 17 issues. It is a classic underground comic book. If you've never checked it out, I highly recommend it.
Shane, how familiar are you with Zap Comics?
Hey, I'm a avid watcher of Esbon82's YouTube channel, so
Thank you, Shane.
that's where I get my independent knowledge from. So I've watched his videos where he talks about this, and I love hearing the history of it. I find this cover is awesome, like for adult intellectuals only. It's great, and it's very cool.
Yeah. So Robert Crumb he's an icon when it comes to the underground scene in comics, especially in the late 60s, early 70s.
Definitely.
Talk to me a little bit, Scotty, about some of his works, because we're not going to go over this is going to be the one Robert Crumb that we're going to talk about here. But there's other things that Robert Crumb is notorious for, is very famous for. Can you talk a little bit about that?
He did create Fritz, and then they made the motion picture out of that.
Really, what Crumb did was he was that guy that said, I'm going to do it my way. And it's not a superhero comic. It's nothing like that. A lot of it's very comedy. There's a lot of dark humor as well. Fritz the Cat is not for kids.
No. I remember watching that when I was a kid somehow. I don't know how that happened.
No, that's
you were that kid in Different Strokes. If you remember the episode Different Strokes.
Yeah.
Look it up, guys. But
yeah, I see a bunch of other stuff. I don't have anything else. The only thing I have of his in my collection, I've got the chocolate bar wrapper, and then I've got some Zap comics and then Fritz the Cat, like you said.
Yeah. So let's go with our next book here. Great stuff, Zap Comics #1. Let's go to our next one, and that is American Splendor #1. This came out in 1976 from Harvey Pecker, who is the creator of American Splendor. High sale of this book is $1,250 at a 9.4. That was in July of 2023. Last sale was surprisingly $14 at a fine, and that was in November of 2023, which also gives it as fair market value of this book, even though I think the book is worth more than $14. However, there's not that many sales of this book. They're not as hot. They don't become as hot as, let's say, the comic books that we know and love in the superhero genre. 9.4 grade. It goes for about $169 and there are 95 copies in the census. This is considered an biography comic book featuring stories of Harvey Pecker and his life in Cleveland, Ohio. They adapted this into a film by Paul Giamatti. I'm trying to remember the year, what it was. It was like 2004, something like that. It was a 16 issue run. It was published annually until 1993, and then it was acquired by Dark Horse Comics. So,
yeah,
you guys, tell me what you know about Pecker.
Well, I know he was also a writer for Underground Comics, and he was a pretty good friend of Robert Crumb's. And I know he created this series, but I've never actually read this series before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is my first time seeing this one too. I just love these like older independent covers. Like again, they're just trying to do whatever they can to get noticed. I like it.
I love the artwork. It's awesome.
Yeah, the artwork is great. It's again very different, stylized. It's very different than we're accustomed to in the way we read comic books as being superhero fans and things like that. But with American Splendor, it was just his life story. That's all it was. It was him telling his story in a comic book format, which was something that was adapted later for other people. And the Paul Giamatti movie, even though I haven't seen it, I've always seen clips of it where they kind of blended it with the animation. They did also animation, so it has some animation in the movie. It's a pretty cool book. It's a pretty cool movie to see. Worth checking out. American Splendor this is the start, and it was running for a very long time.
And
very long time.
I just found out in 2006 it says Picard released a 4-issue American Splendor miniseries through DC imprint Vertigo. I did not know that.
Yes, he did. I did catch that when I was searching for the imagery. and I did see DC Comics. So yeah, he's done some work, man. He is another person that's an icon in the indie industry.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, let's go to our next book here. Cerebus, number 1, 1977. Aardvark Vandom High. This book at a high sell was $12,250 and 9.4, and that was in September of 2019. The last sale of this book was on April of 2025, so just recently for $5,040 and 8.5. The raws are going for about $650. They're very good, while graded 8.0s, which is the average, that's $4,640. There's 404 copies in the census. This is the first appearance of Cerebus the Aardvark. There's a print run of only 2,000 copies. There are counterfeits that exist. They're identified as difference between real copy and the counterfeits is the tap the image cover, tap the cover image and swipe left. So that's pretty much what it is. However, what's important to note about Cerebus, creation by Dave Sin, it was before Spawn, the longest running indie comic with over 300 books. Spawn took it over, but Cerebus, man, that's that character. I love that character.
It's a really
You know
cool
what I mean?
character.
Because of, you know, the amount of time he's gone through, a little bit of some changes here and there, but even now he's still pulling up some books out there.
And that series, like you said, man, it ran for, I don't know the exact amount of issues, but it ran from the late 70s through like at least the late 90s for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, I remember seeing this in not this particular issue, but issues of the run in the comic shop when I was like just a wee 14-year-old starting. And it goes in with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles type of thing.
Yep.
I just looked at it and go, who is ever going to read this?
I actually have a few Cerebus books myself, and what's so deceiving is the amount of work he does in a page. You want to talk about high detail? The Aardvark is the least detail of everything, right? So Cerebus himself is like, oh yeah, he looks like an animated figure, but everything around it, extremely detailed. Like, we're talking about if he has a brick wall, he's drawing all the bricks. You get what I'm saying? That kind of details, even like little crumbs here and there. That's one of the things that Dave Sims was doing with this story. Again, it's a fantasy story, but it's a satire. He's saying so much stuff in Cerebus. And he did manage to have an issue with Spawn, if you guys remember. Yeah, so I believe it's Spawn issue number 8, an early issue. Cerebus was in it. So,
yep. And Dave Sim is a fantastic cartoonist. Another great cartoonist on the list already.
Great. Yeah. So awesome stuff. Check out Cerebus. You definitely could get collected editions of this book. Look, I'm telling you, when you see the details, the penmanship that this book has, you kind of could see it here. Like if you see Cerebus himself, he looks very cartoony. But just look at everybody else in the image.
It's like, definitely anthropomorphic. It's an anthropomorphic book.
Yeah, it's awesome. Great stuff. Let's go with another classic character. Now we're going to go a little more in depth to kind of like what we like our comics. And that's with the book that's next in our list. And that is 2000 AD number 2, 1977 from IPC. Okay. High sale of this book is at $22,800. That was September of 2022. Last sale of this book was $5,520 and 9.0 in April. The raws are going for $2,226 at a fine, while 6.5s are going for $1,508. There's currently 114 copies in the census. First appearance of Judge Dredd includes a sheet of biotronic stickers meant to be affixated to one skin to have the appearance of a cyborg. So this is the first full appearance of Judge Dredd. The issue number 1, you got the first clip of Judge Dredd. So what you see there next week, meet Judge Dredd. That is the first appearance, but let's be honest, it's an advertisement. So I'm not going to count it. It's not the same as, Gambit's first appearance or Venom's. He was an advertisement. But Judge Dredd is one of those characters to me that I love. I love Judge Dredd, and I love the last movie, Dredd, the movie Dredd with Carl Urban as Judge Dredd. He nailed the character. There's parts of the Stallone movie that I'm okay with. It's an enjoyable movie, and there's like some action in it that I really do like from the original series. But you can't be the Carl Urban movie. So Shane, what's your thoughts on Judge Dredd?
So I don't own any Judge Dredd, but I kind of became familiar with it tied into comics because I'm a huge metal guy. And of course, so I listened to Anthrax, and they have a song called I Am the Law, and it talks about Judge Dredd. So that got me, and then I started to see the comics, and I agree that the Carl Urban movie is awesome. And he's actually gone on and done interviews because he gets asked, is there going to be another one? And he's all for it. They just, haven't done it yet. And I don't really know why. Very cool character.
Scotty, what's your thoughts on Judge Dredd?
I'm not real familiar with the character either, but I do know a little bit about the 2000 AD because I'm into collecting magazine format stuff. I really dig the 70s and 80s magazine format stuff, and this is out of the late 80s. I think it's British science fiction magazine.
Yeah.
And it's most notable because of the Judge Dredd first appearance, but it's got a bunch of little like random first appearances in it. And I actually went through a stack of these not too long ago, hoping to find this particular issue. But there are some other cool issues in there, some cool artwork if you're into science fiction stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Judge Dredd is obviously it's European, British comics. There's a lot of people that's touched his work. Brian Bolland, Simon Bisley, and a lot of good writers that done work with Judge Dredd. It's like Garth. I think Garth Ennis even did a Judge Dredd story at one time or another. He's one of those characters. Like he again, like the line goes, "I am the law." Right? During this time, the judges was judge, jury, and executioner. They did all the work, and Judge Dredd is one of those characters. Like he's the best of the best. He never takes off the helmet. That was the first problem with the Stallone movie. Yeah. Right? Like the minute he took off the helmet, everybody was like, "Oh, they screwed up the movie. They don't understand Dredd."
Oh,
and one of the things that makes Dredd so cool is his supporting cast. Judge Anderson, she's great, but also the villains, man. Judge Dredd has some great villains. Judge Death is scary as hell. You know what I mean?
That counts for a lot too. Having a cool rogues gallery counts for an awful lot. Because I was always really into Dick Tracy because he had a really cool rogues gallery.
So if you've never seen the Judge Dredd comic books, go pick it up. They are violent. If you want to see the movie, I suggest watch Dredd, not Judge Dredd, watch Dredd. And the reason why they never made a sequel is it didn't perform well. Because it wasn't really advertised. It came out on my birthday. I remember that. I went to see it. It's kind of a low budgety movie, but it has the same feelings of like RoboCop. So if you like RoboCop, you're gonna like Dredd. It has that kind of, and it's Mega City 1. It's a giant building that's a city. Intense, dude. Watch it. I promise you're gonna like it. I know you're gonna like it, Scotty. I guarantee you're gonna like it. Let's go to our next one. Our next one is Fantasy Quarterly featuring Elf Quest #1. This came out in 1978 for Independent Publishing Syndicate. High sale of this book was $2,395 and a 9.8. That was in November of 2023. Last sale of this book was $160 at a fine. That was just this week. Raws are going for $250, very fines, while graded copies you get for like $350. There are currently 632 copies in the census, and this is the first appearance of ElfQuest. And yes, there is discussion of an animated series in development That was back in 2024. ElfQuest has a following, and it has a big following. I'm going to start with you, Shane. What can you tell me about ElfQuest that you're familiar with?
So I'm not familiar with this, the independent publisher syndicate run, but I'm more familiar with the Aircell run because it was, again, going to the comic shop when those were coming out, and the comic shop basically saying, "Hey, this company is actually in Canada." I'd be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, I'll buy it then." So I have most of the Aircell run of all their books, actually, pretty
Mhm.
much. But ElfQuest, yeah, it was very unique looking art, especially if you got the ones that were colored instead of the black and white. They look great, and I'd love to see a movie of it or a show for sure.
Yeah. Scotty, you got anything on ElfQuest?
I mean, it was created in 1978. I was trying to figure out. It looks familiar to me. Who does the artwork? Does anybody know? Did
So,
Barry Blair do the artwork? Because it looks
no,
very
so
similar.
it's a couple. Wendy and Richard Pinney,
Oh,
they do
okay.
they do the work. It's their property. They still own it to this day, and they still produce ElfQuest books.
Well, it's
There
just
was a
weird,
short
but
time that it was actually in a Marvel issues. I'm not sure if it was part of Epic or it was part of I think it was Epic. It was part of Marvel for a little while, but really they own the property. It's their property.
well, the
And
only reason I was thinking Shane said that Aircell was had published them, and Barry Blair owned Aircell, so I don't know.
yeah.
It's a
No,
similar.
they've always owned the property, but they've also licensed it out because ElfQuest does have a following. It has a pretty big following. Um, and a lot of people love it. It kind of it every time I see ElfQuest, I immediately think of Legend of Zelda. I don't know.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah, I can
But
see
it
that.
has like it kind of it's what I call Western manga in that way, where it has a lot of that Japanese influences in its style. And it's just they've been doing this for a long time, man. You know what I mean? It's definitely something. I think the value of this book at 250 at a very fine, it's very affordable. I've seen it plenty of times. ElfQuest, I think is we're gonna see a resurgence of ElfQuest really soon. I think, especially we get this animated series. If this animated series actually happens and comes to fruition, I do think we're gonna see a boom in the ElfQuest. All right, let's move on to our next book. That's actually a bit of a rarity. Raw #2. This is the graphic magazine for damn intellectuals. This book came out in 1980. It's a magazine for Raw Books graphics. This is only in Raw copy. I did not find any books in the census. $570 Raw was the high sale, and that was in February of 2022. Last sale, this book was $350 at a no grade. $375 for a very fine is what the Raws are going for. The purpose behind this magazine is that it holds the first chapter of Mouse by Art Spiegelman. The first part of the story was told through 7 chapters that were released in a serialized format in standalone bonus inserts, and it was distributed by Raw Magazine during 1980 to 86. We're familiar, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Mouse,
I've seen it.
and that's what this is about. Um, I have a copy of Mouse. I know, Shane, you said you had a copy of Mouse, right?
So I have the second one. I'm still got to pick up the first one and then read them both all together.
Okay. So obviously by the depiction here, it is a portrayal of the Holocaust, and where the mice are the Jews and the cats are the Nazis. This
Okay.
is a book that if you are a comic book reader, I say reader, you should read this book. This book has so much significance. This book is so important. It's worth reading. It is heartbreaking, of course, because we're talking about the Holocaust here.
Oh yeah.
Scotty, how are you familiar with Mouse?
I am not familiar with Mouse, but I would like to read it though, because I am familiar, of course, with the Holocaust. It's heartbreaking, man. So I know it's going to be a good story.
Yeah. So Shane, you said you have volume 2, but you never had a chance to actually read it.
No, I started to read it because I wasn't super familiar with it, and then I kind of learned about it, and started to hear that it was so good. So I'm like, oh, I'll pick it up. And I had no idea that there was two parts. So I actually bought the second part thinking it was the first part. Started to read it, and I'm like, oh, wait a sec, this seems like it's something's up here. And then figured out that there was a first part. So
yeah. So this is one of those books. I don't know if you guys looked in the news. I know in news here, this book was banned in some libraries.
That's what I heard.
Because of the subject matter. Even though the book is everybody should read this book. This is not one of those books that you should ban it. Of course, that was part of some dumb agenda of people banning books because of certain things, because of Nazi symbols. But the reality of this story, this is a story about the Holocaust. This is by Art Spiegelman. He tells the story about this family who had to deal with the concentration camp, but he tells it in the story of using mice and cats. If you look at the image in both of them with the Nazi logo, you could see the cat image is really Hitler, and very controversial, but extremely important.
Yeah, it gets the point across.
It's one of those books that, you know how everybody says if you're a comic book guy, you should read Watchmen?
Yeah.
This is in that same well. This is one of those books that's part of that must-read comics. That's how I feel about this book. That's how important this book is. You don't have to be a Jewish person to have read it. Just the story of it by itself is worth reading it. There's countless printings of it. So, you could always find a book for about $20 because it's collected. But the original one, what came out in that Raw magazine, really good stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our next book here. Another rarity, and that's Love and Rockets #1. This came out in 1981 by Los Brothers Hernandez. High sale of this book is 2,520 and a 9.8, and that was in January 2025. Last sale of this book was $80 at no grade. That was in March of 2025. This book, raw, was going for $16 near mint. However, I think it's worth a lot more than that. $895 at 7.0. 123 copies in the census. Now, what you see here is 32-page black and white independently published color comic book, not colored comic book. First printing, 800 copies exist. That's why I said $16 is extremely low. However, it was then picked up by Fantagraphics, which they acquired the title. And now I think Love and Rockets, is it still running today? I'm not even sure. Scotty, are you familiar with Love and Rockets?
A little bit. I mean, I know that the Hernandez brothers are the creators, and I don't know that if it's still running or not, though. Honestly,
look at that print run, 800 copies. That's another thing I love about independence.
Early 80s.
Yeah, like you take a chance on it and try it and hope for the best. I've never read this one myself, but I've heard of Love and Rockets. I just never read any of them.
Yeah, Love and Rockets, it's not traditional superhero comics. It's just stories that talk about themes of love, family, culture. It's very diverse, so it's ahead of its time in that way. So you have different types of, family dynamics, different types of lifestyles. And when you see the actual colored book, it's a little more familiar to most people. But again, the Hernandez brothers, they started the book and it just continues. And it's really just an anthology of stories. And this is the first book that's actually exists. A lot of people don't know about this one. There is another one that's a colored version that did come out, but this was one that I saw and I was like, oh, that's the original, that's the real first one. So Love and Rockets, another indie title that is highly praised by a lot of people in the industry.
Yeah, I know people that specifically collect it.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to one that I know you guys got to know, and that's Comico Primer #2. This came out in 1982 from Comico. A high sale of this book is 6,609.8, and that was in March of 2022. Last sale of this book was $750 and 9.4, and that was in March of this year. Raws are going for $340, while graded copies sell for about $811. There's currently 947 copies. This is the first appearance of Grendel Rose Hunter Rose first appearance of Argent the Wolf, Matt Wagner creation, Grendel. It's just one of those books, man. I put it in the same vein as pretty much The Crow in my mind. That's how I look at this book. But Shane, you talked a little bit about Grendel, so I'm gonna let you start this one off.
Yeah, so Grendel for me, I missed the first part. I picked up Grendel with the introduction of the female character as Grendel. And if anybody hasn't looked at that book, I actually just picked up the trade. It's the second volume, has that one in it. And I remember picking that up when it came out, again, a Comico book. And the art style, I think it was Brothers that did it. I can't remember for sure, but it was just amazing. It just blew my little mind. So I was hooked right from the get-go, and then kind of learned more about the Grendel character and how it just kind of moves from person to person. So
yeah,
I think it's a cool series. I have no idea why this is not some kind of TV show on a streaming service. I don't get it.
Scotty, what's your take on Grendel?
I never got into the character, and I'm not real familiar with Grendel. However, if I would have seen this book in the wild, I would have gravitated towards it because it's Comico, and Comico has put out some really cool comics throughout the 80s, and so that would be something I would be eyeballing anyways. But I'm not familiar with the character, honestly.
So Grendel is a creation of Matt Wagner, and he created this character, but I utilize the Crow as an example because it's very similar to the Crow in the senses that Grendel is a character that moves on. It's a mantle. So there's a female Grendel. There's other types of Grendels that come within the story. So it's a big part of it. It's crazy violent as well. It could be crazy violent, even though the imagery we're seeing right here looks a little more cartoony.
Yeah.
But Matt Wagner's style, it's amazing what he's done. And you may be familiar with Mage. That's another one of his properties that he's big on. But I think Grendel's just a little bit more important. And to your answer on why we haven't seen Grendel in some kind of live action or animated, it has been tried. I don't think it ever came into fruition. That's the whole thing. It's one of those option picks. However, we can eventually see Grendel come out in some kind of production of some way, whether it's animated. I think it lends more towards a live action environment because you got you could get the guys that done John Wick and they could do Grendel perfectly. You know what I mean? It's that kind of stuff. The last Crow movie, which I'll be honest, I don't think it was a good movie, but if you get those guys to do a Grendel and do it in that way, I can see it happen. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to go with something that I think everybody knows. And Shane, this is the one that got away.
Uh-oh. What do we got? Oh, no.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, 1984 from Mirage Studios. The high sale of this book was $245,000 at a 9.8 September 2021. The last sale of this book, would you believe it, was $100 at a no grade? That guy got a huge deal.
Oh my god.
The Raws are going for $12,955 fine. 8.5 seems to be the average at $13,205. The census is actually kind of high in my impression, especially for the first print run. 1,316 copies. Of course, it's the first appearance of Donatello, Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, Splinter, and it's the first appearance and the death of Shredder. The first run had 3,000 copies. That's why I said it's a high print run when there's 3,000 copies. That means more than 1/3 have been slabbed. I'm gonna let Jane breathe for a second.
Okay.
Scotty.
Yes.
How much do you love the Turtles?
Oh man, I was born in 1982, so I was a child of the 80s, but I grew up in the 90s. The Turtles were big throughout both, obviously. So the Turtles have been present in my life. I was more honestly familiar with the Saturday morning version of the TMNT, like the action figures and stuff like that growing up. But then in adulthood, getting back into comics, I really appreciate the Mirage stuff, the older stuff. And man, it's fantastic. It's got to be here on this list. It absolutely has to
that's a
be
must.
up towards the top of this list, actually. But yeah,
It's
fantastic.
probably the most expensive of the bunch.
I can't
All the
deny
books that we have here, this is probably going to be the most expensive out of all of them.
I mean, and the impact on pop culture, man. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have had a massive impact on my life and so many other people's lives.
Yeah. All right, Shane, go ahead. Tell us about your turtles.
So I've said this before, and I'll say it for people that might have missed it. I was collecting at this time. I was in comic shops. I was very fortunate. Had always had a comic shop that me and my friend that got me into comics went to, and I remember being in the store when this came out, and I remember seeing, like, the new comics are in the rack. There was 20 of them or however many, and I just remember picking it up, looking at it, and going, who on earth is going to buy comics about turtles? Turtles that are ninjas? Never. Put it back, and then I just keep getting reminded of it when I see it in these lists.
Oh man,
$245,000.
I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry to be torturing you this way. Look at his face.
The other thing is that, like, when I was buying then, like, bags and boards were a thing. Like, I would have had it in a bag and a board. Like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm just saying, man. I never, like I said, I've told you this as well, Shane. I never had I was never able to grab a Turtles book. I was already moving from being a kid to being a teenager. So I did watch the cartoons. I enjoyed the cartoons for what they were. I do recognize the Turtles from middle school because I had a friend who really liked it, and he drew an image of one of the Turtles. I think he drew Raphael, to be honest. And that was my first exposure to the Turtles, and in this style too, the Eastman style. And man, when they blew up to the point that to this day they're still relevant. You know what I'm saying? That's a big deal, especially for an indie book.
Dude, The Last Ronin was awesome. It was so
The Last Ronin, and they're planning to make that into a movie. But you also got the animated series Mutant Mayhem that came out about a year or two ago. That was semi-successful, but successful enough because they're now a Nickelodeon property, so they just keep hammering them out.
I collect the NECA toys. They still are very successful with the toys.
Yeah, exactly. So the Turtles have gone past the brink of icon status. They're at that level now, right? And to think, when they wrote it, when Peter Eastman, when Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird wrote the Turtles, all they were doing was making a parody of Daredevil. That's what it is originally. But, with the hand and all that stuff, that's where it came from, the Foot Clan. But then it just morphed into something else, which I think is so awesome seeing today. And, kudos goes out to the guys. I think he got a bad deal, to be honest with you. That's what I think that's part of it. Because the amount of money the Turtles generates today, they should be millionaires.
Oh, man. Yeah,
you get what
absolutely.
I'm saying? Okay. Our next book is a book that now we're going to go back into the superhero world. We kind of like trickled in there with the Turtles and Grendel, but this is one of those books that started out as a Silver Age book and kind of morphed into an indie title that a lot of people, they don't really grab as much, but you should grab it because of its significance, and that's Miracle Man #1, which was originally entitled Marvel Man, and this came out in 1985 for Eclipse Comics. A high sale of this book is $403 and 9.8, and that was in April of 2022. Last sale of this book was $10 near mint. It's very affordable. You could pick this up for about $10. 9.8 goes for about $152. There's currently 1,681 copies in the census. This is based off of a 1950s British superhero with the name that was renamed Miracle Man, obviously for legal purposes, Marvel specifically. This version was written by Alan Moore. And Neil Gaiman also wrote in it. Alan Davis did some work in it as well. This was Watchmen before Watchmen.
Yeah, the one thing that kind of I think has always held this book back from being, because it is independent and it was popular, is that there's so much confusion about the name and who had the rights and all of that. I just read the latest volume, and it was pretty good, and they did a good job of kind of twisting everything together. But I think that's part of what holds this book back from being worth more.
Yeah. Scotty, how much you know about Miracle Man?
Not a whole lot, to be honest with you. Not a whole lot.
So when you think about Miracle Man, I want you to think of Shazam in some way.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of Shazam into the story about Miracle Man. So there's Miracle Man, that's Kid Miracle Man, and originally called Marvel Man. That was the original intention. But what Alan Moore did, he did a deconstruction of this character.
I know Alan Moore. Yeah.
Yeah. Who doesn't know Alan Moore, right?
Yeah.
What he did was he did a deconstruction of this character, and he put it in a real life scenario. And even more crazy, they put stories. So you guys know about Invincible, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of elements of Invincible that comes from Miracle Man. A lot. Okay. So what you read in Invincible, you're going to see a lot of it in Miracle Man. There's a rape scene in Miracle Man.
Oh, wow.
We're talking about 1985 comic books here, right?
Yeah.
Because Miracle Man was not a kid's comic book. Even though it was a superhero comic book, it was set in a real life scenario. So what we see in The Boys, what we see in Watchmen, all this stuff started in Miracle Man. And to me, I find a little bit of a shame that it's not getting as much love as it probably deserves. I think it deserves much more love. But to Shane's point, there's this confusion on who has the rights to it.
Yeah.
And now Marvel has the rights to it. So it's now officially a Marvel property. Mm-hmm. However, it started off like this, and this is definitely worth reading. The artwork in itself is amazing. Like I said, Gary Leach started off, but then also Alan Davis does work in this book. So if you haven't read it, again, it's very affordable, and there's countless reprints out there of Miracle Man. And go check it out, guys. Trust me, it's worth the read.
Wasn't like didn't they try to bring the character back in Marvel Timeless at some point?
Yeah, I don't know what they did this whole thing with it, but it never really went anywhere, so I don't even know why. Yeah. And they renamed them back to Marvel Man, so I honestly don't know what happened with it.
Okay.
There's this great image of Joe Quesada doing an image of him, but I don't know. Like honestly, I don't know what happened to it. It just kind of like fell off.
Yeah, because they did like Miracle Man variants. They did a round of variants.
Yeah, they did Miracle Man variants. I know they're reprinting. You know what I mean? They're reprinting the storylines because they were written by Alan Moore. Maybe it could be some Alan Moore stuff involved in it. Neil Gaiman was involved in it. He wrote some stuff with Miracle Man. I honestly don't know what's the story with it. I know some of you have been asking for this one. I couldn't have passed up on this one.
Oh, yeah.
The Crow #1, 1989 from Caliber Press.
Had to be there.
High sale, $18,000 and 9.8. That was January 2022. Last sale of this book was $688 at a no grade. And the raw copies go about $783 near mint. However, graded copies at 9.4 average out $1,014. There's currently 1,156 copies in the census. This is the first full appearance of the Crow, also his first solo series. There is first printing, second printings, third printings that are all identical to one another, but can be differentiated by the date printed on the inside cover. The first appearance is February 1989. I love the Crow.
Yeah. Look
I
at this.
absolutely love the Crow.
Look
It's
at this
awesome.
cover. Like that is a tough 9.8.
James
Yeah,
O'Barr,
tell me about it.
February 1989.
hmm I have yet to seen a crisp copy of this book.
I bet it's tough to find crispy.
It was a black and white book, so the paper
Yeah.
quality was pretty crummy. The blacks turned brown. So even this image is kind of it's not like a solid black, but damn, it's good.
Yeah.
And going back to like I was saying about TMNT a few minutes ago, this is another one that's had a huge impact on pop culture.
Yeah.
You know, with the movies, man, the first movie blew my mind growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then last year I was at the Comic-Con and I'm just walking around. I think I've told you this, Izzy.
Yeah, you told me.
Just walking around. I walk into a random, booth, and there's O'Barr standing there, like
Oh,
look
nice.
flipping through the long boxes, and I'm like, I do the double take, like, is that no? And I look, and he sees me looking at him. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "What are you doing over here, man?" And he's just like, "Oh, just looking for some issues." And I'm like, "Wow, that's awesome!" Like, because I'm in Niagara Falls, Canada, for anybody that doesn't know.
Yep.
So I was just kind of like, "Thanks so much for coming to the falls. Like, really appreciate it. Like, thanks so much. Like, I hope you had a great time." And just kind of left it at that because I didn't want to, I don't like to infringe on people, and he was doing his thing, but just a totally like down to earth dude, just walking around, but like no, standing beside him, even like knowing that he's responsible for, like Scotty says, all this cultural, phenomenon is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the Crow. Here's the funny thing about Crow, and I'm going to talk a little bit about James O'Barr, because back in 1990, I was actually going to conventions. I was going to conventions as early as 1990, and I came across James O'Barr plenty of times because he was always in the New York area, right? Even now, he's scheduled to be in some conventions as well, some local conventions here. So you always get a chance to. I always had a chance to see him. And the Crow comic book, this particular comic book and the series has always been accessible to me, right? However, I never picked them up at that time because it was what it was. It wasn't what it is today. I'm like you, Shane. This is my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where it was in front of me. I personally love the Crow. I love the movie. The tragedy that's part of the movie is also to the mystique of the Crow, because if you know the story of James O'Barr, if you never heard the story of James O'Barr, it is tragic. It is a downright tragic story, his real life story, and he utilized this story to it's kind of almost a biography in a way of his life. In a way, it's obviously not exactly, but it is. He has raw emotion in that book. And if you ever get a chance to just look up stories about James O'Barr and his life and what he went through, you'll see how the Crow mirrors it. Before the Crow movie, I think it was his girlfriend or something like that. If I'm not mistaken, there was a death to his loved one, and she died, and it destroyed him, like destroyed him. Got into drugs and alcohol and all that stuff. And he was writing this story. He's obviously he was able to sell, the comic book for Caliber to do the story. And the story just, it didn't blow up, but it kind of stood like, it had like this cult following to it. You know what I mean? There was a cult following to the Crow before the movie. So when the word got out that Brandon Lee was gonna make the movie, everybody was like, "Oh, this is awesome," because it was at a good time to make adult comic book movies. RoboCop was out already and things like that. So they went ahead, they made the movie. They were making the movie, And towards the middle of the movie, obviously, if you don't know, there was an accident. There was a gun that was supposed to have blanks. The actor, obviously unwillfully killed Brandon Lee in one of those scenes, and then of course he died. That distraughted Obar. That like destroyed him because he became very close friends with Brandon, and it was like another person in my life is dead. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was the time he actually hated the Crow as a result of all this. And it's just stood the test of time. The movie came out. They managed to do it. They got the stunt double to do some scenes in which they'll do. This is like early CGI. If you watch the movie today, you'll probably catch them. You'll catch some of the scenes of it. But yeah, there's this whole tragedy around this movie, around his story. So get a chance. There's a YouTuber by the name of Matt with 3 T's. He has a great story of the Crow, and James O'Barr. I absolutely love this soundtrack. It's to me is the greatest
it's
soundtrack
fantastic.
ever.
Yeah, it was one of the, there were some great 90s, great soundtracks to come out of the 90s, and this was definitely one of them.
This is to me is number one. 9 Inch Nails, Dead Souls. I love The Cure, Burn. You got Rollins Band. You got Stone Temple Pilots with Big Empty.
Yep.
My Life with Dual Kill Cult. So if you're like into industrial rock, this is the album for you.
Oh yeah, man, for sure.
So awesome. I love it. I hear it every so often. Every so often, I'm like, it's time to listen to some Crow.
I mean, it would teleport you straight back to the 90s.
Yeah, for sure.
And then when you watch the movie and you hear the music with the movie, it's like watching a music video in a movie and stuff like that. So awesome stuff, man. Really good stuff.
Yep.
All right. Our next book is a little more lighthearted, but it's also very important because it's Bone, number one, 1991 cartoon books. High sale of this book is $15,000 at 9.8. That was September of 2023. Last sale of this book was $5 at a no grade. Again, that's an outlier. That doesn't happen. The raws are going for $1,636 near mint. 8.5 goes for $1,575. There's currently 527 copies in the census. This is the first appearance of Fawn Bone, Phony Bone, Smiley Bone, Thorn, the rat creatures in the standard comic book. Rumor has it that Netflix secured the rights to Jeff Smith's Bone, but development has been discontinued as of April 22. This is one of those comics. When it came out, like, it blew up in the 90s. Everybody was talking about Bone. It was huge in the 90s.
Yep.
And everybody knew it was meant to be a cartoon, and it was based. It was a fun story. It was lighthearted. It was an all ages story, but it respected children as opposed to talk down to it. That's what made Bone so special at its time.
Yes.
And it's something that it still, reigns today. Jeff Smith, takes Bone very seriously, and rightfully so. This is one of those books, man, that I wish I had a copy of this book when it came out.
My youngest has all these trades of this and just loves them.
I'm sorry, Shane. Go ahead, man.
No, I was just going to say, and seeing that it's discontinued, to me, like, that almost says, well, either there was a disagreement with how they were going to do it, or something else happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You were going to say, Scotty?
Oh, I was just going to say, I have a massive collected edition of this in hardback, and I'm super glad that I own this. This was a series that's both written and illustrated by Jeff Smith, which that always blows my mind when somebody can manage to both write and illustrate their own stuff. But it ran for 55 issues, and I got this hardcover that collects all 55 issues, and I'm looking forward to going through and reading that someday, or rereading it. I've read some of it. It's a cool series.
Yeah, it's a fun series, right?
It is. It's fun.
Like,
it's fun.
It's an all ages book, so anybody can read it. Kids can read it. They love it.
Of
You know,
course.
I put it. It's one of those books that to me today would be so big if this was to come out today because the artwork's still great. It still holds up today. Um, you know, like kids love Dogman and Captain Underpants.
Oh, Dogman's that's like the number one selling book
Dude,
out
2
right
million
now.
copies right now sold.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know what I'm
Dogman's
saying? We talk
killing
about
it.
Absolute Batman with 400,000 copies. Hey, Dogman's like
Yeah,
2 million.
that's
You know
pocket
what I
change for
mean?
Dogman.
Bone is one of those books that could do that. You know what I'm saying? Um, and rightfully so. It was going through Scholastic. It was selling. It was outperforming many of the comic books at the time as well.
Well, man,
So
if
that was the thing about Bone.
it's going through Scholastic, so it's in like every elementary school.
It was a big book during its time. Let's move on to another classic that we all know. Who doesn't like crime noir? And it all starts. Dark Horse present the 5th anniversary special. Came out in 1991 for Dark Horse Comics. High sell is $622.09.8. That was in July of 2021. Last sale of this book was $34 at a no grade. The raws are going for about $25 near mint. 9.6 are the average for $198. There's 291 copies in the census. This is the first Sin City story, first appearance of Marv. This is when Frank Miller was at his best. Let's just say that much.
Yeah. Like, has there been like a better kind of movie translation? That movie is amazing, and all the characters are great. And you're right, like Frank was firing on all cylinders then.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about the specific issue, to be honest with you, but the Dark Horse Presents, like that's something when I see them in bargain bins, I always grab them out and look through them because
Yeah.
it was Dark Horse's flagship title for years until it ended. But it contained several first appearances of some really cool characters, Concrete being the main one.
Yeah.
But always, if you see these in bargain bins, pick them up, go through them because there's some cool little features in these books.
Yeah. So with this one, like when I was looking up Sin City, I completely forgot that it was part of the anniversary special. It wasn't part of the standard book, so it's kind of like it's the annual. So this was like annual number 5 of Dark Horse Presents, and it featured, plenty of characters like you mentioned, Concrete, Give Me Liberty. You can see her in the cover right there. But if you look at that very last part, right underneath Aliens versus Predator, the very last one says Sin City. And when Sin City came out, everybody's like, it's Frank Miller. He's doing crime noir. He's doing this black and white thing with the inks and negatives. He's taking advantage of negative space. And it was like we saw what we saw in Dark Knight, Dark Knight Returns was good. What we're seeing here is like, this is art. You know what I mean? And then he understood negative space. And oh my goodness. And like you said, Shane, when we got that movie, which he didn't want to do, I'm going to tell you right now, he was approached by Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez said, hey, I want to make a Sin City movie. And he was like, nope, 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 nope. Then Robert Rodriguez says, hey, come out to California. I'm going to show you something. And Robert Rodriguez went ahead and he made a short of Sin City. He made a short of Sin City. And he showed it to Frank. He had like what's his name, Josh Hartnett in it and all that stuff, which eventually ended up in the movie. He showed it to Frank, and Frank saw it, and he was like, "Where do I sign?"
Yeah,
and then that's the end of the story. Because what was Sin City, the movie, the first movie, was like you said, it's like reading the comic book. Everything about it, like the blacks and the white, and then you got the red, of course, with the blood, or the lady in red, where you had all of the other stories there. I think Sin City, I wish we could see more Sin City today, because it's a world, and you could pretty much do it.
So good, that movie. I love it.
I have a massive hardcover of that as well.
Yeah. So good, man. So good. Our next book is another one that everybody should know, and it's extremely significant because it's the longest running comic book today in the indie world.
Oh, yeah.
Spawn #1. This book came out in 1992 for Image Comics. A high sale of this book was $9,995 and a 9.9. That was December of 2021. Last sale of this book was $135 and 9.8, and that was in April of 2025. Raw copies are going for $28 near mint. Graded copies are going for $135 and 9.8. Shane, there's 35,899 comics in the census. First appearance of Spawn, Sam and Twitch, Malbolgia, Jason Wynn, you name it. But this is the longest running independent comic. It is also the highest selling independent comic of all time. Let's talk about Todd McFarlane.
So I think that everybody with those numbers of 35,000, I think that covers many, many, many comic collectors. I know that I'll eventually pick up a 9.8 of this just to have. I have another copy. I think this book is great. We talk about this book a lot. I'm curious to know from you two, are we going to see another Spawn movie in the next 10 years?
I'll let you answer that one, Scotty.
I don't know, man, because you hear news, like you'll hear little things from Todd himself, and then they seem to backpedal. I don't know, honestly. I don't keep up with the movie stuff too much either.
I think it's going to happen. I think he's close enough to making it happen. The problem with Todd McFarlane right now is he wants too much control, which is fine. I think that's fine. But we just talked about Frank Miller. Frank Miller's responsible for the Spirit, right? Which is also indie darling.
Yeah.
Right? Frank Miller did not do a good movie. That's what I'm afraid of with Todd, because he is not a director. He won't know exactly what to do. He'll be a first-time director. And as a first, he could hit it out the park. I'm not going to say he couldn't, but I don't think he could. I think he needs assistance, and I think he needs someone that is willing to see his vision. The problem is he too invested in this, and I think that's part of it. I think, but I do believe maybe within 5 years, I'm going to throw 5 years. You say 10. I'm going to say 5 years. I think it's going to happen. He's very close to it. He had Jamie Foxx attached to it. I don't know if Jamie Foxx is still attached to it.
Yeah, I was going to say he was attached to it at one point.
Yeah. So
I really like the first movie. I love the animated series. I have them both on DVD. I think they're really good. I think they look fine for what they were. So
yeah, for its time maybe, but it I'll be honest, dude. I saw it not that long ago. It doesn't hold up.
Oh.
Like the animation, the CGI on that movie is hard to watch in some spots, and the acting is kind of rough too. Even though I like Michael J. White, I like him, and I think for its time it was fine, but it was definitely a movie of its time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing is Clown. I think John Leguizamo's Clown was probably the best thing of that movie.
But as far as this is a book, man, like this is one of those, like I have 5 copies of this in my collection. I grab it every single time I see it. This came out when I was 10 years old, and it absolutely blew mine and every one of my friends' minds. And the impact that it had is massive. This would have to be one of those that would be up towards the top of the list. I don't really collect a lot of McFarlane's Spawn stuff, but I collect any of the early McFarlane stuff I'm picking up. I am a lifelong fan of Todd McFarlane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's Spawn #1. Let's move on to our next one. Another popular character, John Byrne's X-Men 21. This came out in 1993 for Dark Horse Comics. $525 and 9.8 is a high sale for November 2021. The last sale is $175 and a 9.6. Raws are going for $103 at a very fine, while 9.8s go for $309. There's currently 3,511 copies in the census. Note, it says first appearance of Hellboy in color.
Okay. Okay.
Hellboy, another character who has stood the test of time. And I think he's one of those iconic characters to me that when Hellboy first came out, I didn't think he was going to be as popular as he ended up becoming. But something about those movies made it work. Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2. And then he just kind of like he's cruising, but he's well known. You get what I'm saying, guys?
The David Harbour, I like the first two movies. I thought they were like super well cast. I thought he did a great job. The David Harbour movie, I thought he did a great job too. And then I just recently watched the newest one, and it was okay. Like there was a lot of points where I was just kind of shaking my head at the story. But
it was it was very done in a low budget. I know that much.
Oh yeah, very low budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's your take on Hellboy, Scotty?
It's a character that I never really got into. Believe it or not, I've never seen any of the Hellboy movies.
Oh, you're missing out, man.
I know that Next Men was another Dark Horse title from the early 90s.
Yeah, it was John Byrne's Next Men, yeah.
Okay.
But he debuted in Next Men, and Manola did the artwork here. Yeah, Mark really enjoyed Crooked Man. That's the one that you're referring to, the one that came out not that long ago. But just so you guys can see what Hellboy originally looked like,
yeah,
he debuted in a comic book called Great Salt Lake Convention. This is a pamphlet, and Mike Manola did a drawing, and in the belt buckle, the character it says Hellboy. So this is not the traditional Hellboy, but you could tell that he had the name already in mind. This is, I guess you could call this a prototype to what Hellboy will eventually become.
Like what Todd had with Spawn with on the Malibu Sun.
Yeah. So this is pretty much the same thing, but this is kind of like, this is more of a prototype than anything, but this book is worth about $3,000 just because of that.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Now, the other book that people need to look out for was San Diego's Comic-Con Comics, issue number 2. That is the true first appearance of Hellboy, and it's a 5-page storyline of Hellboy as we traditionally know him. That book has 5 pages. It's black and white. So what everybody thought for a very long time, people thought Next Men was the first appearance of Hellboy. This is the first appearance of Hellboy.
Ah.
A throwaway comic book that you got in a convention.
That's talking about don't throw anything away, people. Don't throw anything away.
That's what I tell my wife all the time, man. It's like, hey, I need this. Especially when they give you free comic books in a convention. Imagine you got this comic book in a convention for free, and it just happens to be Hellboy.
It's good stuff.
You know what I'm saying? It's really cool stuff, man. I think this was one of those moments where it's like, I just love this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
I mean, you never know, because when I'm at local cons, you get people handing ash cans and all kinds of stuff to you. You never know.
Yeah. You never know. I got an ash can right now of a book that came out not long ago. You just never know what you're gonna have in front of you. My best friend, he just found some copies that were given to him of Futurama #1, but they're Comic-Con exclusives, and those books are going for $300 each.
I bet. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're going to send them out to get graded. I don't think a lot of people are going to know about it. Okay. This is 8 Ball 11. This came out in 1993 for Fantagraphics Books. It's a high sell of $1,000 and 9.8, and that was in July of 2021. Last sale of this book was $20 fine. The raws are going for about $22 at a fine. 9.8s could go for $284. There's only 34 copies in the census. Now, 8 Ball is an anthology series done by Daniel Cowles, who also writes the story Ghost World, which ended up being a cult classic about some cynical teenage girls. Really is a coming of age story of post high school drama. It's very much in the same world of a Robert Crumb type of thing. But more importantly, and this is why this is in the list, Ghost World was the first comic book that ever was nominated for an Academy Award. It was actually adapted into the film, and the film's screenplay was nominated for Academy Award. This is the first time that's ever happened in a comic book. And it's Ghost World. Now, here's what's interesting about Ghost World. It was reprinted, and the movie also stars a young Scarlett Johansson.
Nice.
Can always spot her no matter what. Like, you can just tell from her face, even when she's that young.
Mm-hmm. Tell me that's not cool, though.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
You know? And the movie looks fun. It's one of those, it has kind of like a Kevin Smith type of vibe to it. But it's definitely worth checking out. It has Steve Buscemi in it as well. It's a funny movie. I got to see some clips of it today. I'm all for it. I've always knew about it, but I never, I forgot Scarlett Johansson was in it. But definitely worth checking out. You guys are not familiar with Ghost World, are you?
No, but I'm familiar with 8 Ball. I actually have a few. That's right up my alley, man. I have a few issues of 8 Ball, and it's a really cool Fantagraphics comic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, maybe you have 11. If you have 11, then you got a good book in front of you.
Possibly, man. I have several issues.
Let's go to our next book, one that, again, we're familiar with. I'm sure Shane could talk about it. Invincible #1 came out in 2003 for Image Comics. High sale of this book is $7,000 at 9.8. That was in June of 2021. Last sale of this book is $2,200 at 9.6. The raws are going for $1,000 near mint, while 9.6 go for about $2,340. There's 2,078 copies in the census. This is the first appearance of Invincible, Omni-Man, Titan, and it's the first cameo appearance of Adam Eve. What makes this book so expensive is that the print count was 10,800 copies.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about some Invincible.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for quite a few weeks now, and again, I don't think it's calming down because we've got Battle Beast coming out soon, and they're really pushing on that, and it's the same creative team, obviously. I'm rewatching the show again. I've never read the issues, but I'm working on getting all of the compendiums, because the single issues are just, that's not going to happen. But again, like we've talked about, classic, awesome story, relatable, adult content, just a really cool story.
Mm-hmm. It started off as a really cool comic that didn't quite get the attention that it deserved, and so like you have these books that were in short print, and then the show was freaking awesome, and I feel like that built up the fan base. There was already a fan base, but like I felt like that built it up and had people going out after. Invincible has been hot for a while. It's gonna stay hot for a while. The issues are hard to find. People that have them aren't letting them go.
Yeah.
But it's already had a pretty big impact as far as like on pop culture and things like that. The season 1 was good. I haven't seen the second season. Is it out?
Yeah, it's at season 3 just finished.
See, I've only seen the first one, and it was really good. And I've read the early comic books, and they were fantastic as well.
Yeah,
but it's good. It's a good series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Invincible, when it came out in January of 2023. It came out in January of 2003. This was Robert Kirkman's first real comic book with an Image, and for what it's worth, it didn't gain traction. In fact, it was on the verge of cancellation. And when it first came out, the artwork was fine for what it was. It was simplistic. It wasn't too detailed, but it worked. It definitely worked, and it looked good. Obviously, they had to had some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Term I'm looking for. They were invested in Invincible. And the reason why I say this is because his costume is the Image logo. You get what I'm saying? His costume is literally the Image logo. It's the eye. So, and Kirkman's very tricky that way. He's a very tricky fella. You know what I mean? In convincing people to do his, read his comic books and do things. I don't think Invincible would have been as big as it is today if it really wasn't for our next book, The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Massive.
Yeah, 2003 Image Comics, a 9.9 sold for $23,459, and that was in August of 2024. Last sale of this book was $990 and 9.2. Raws also go for about $1,000. The graded copies are $2,611 and 9.8. There's currently 3,769 copies in the census. This is the premiere issue of the Zombie Outbreak that was created by Robert Kirkman, that was later adapted by AMC. First appearance of Rick Grimes and Shane Walsh. The print run, and this is why this book is so expensive, was less than Invincible with 7,266. This is the book that catapulted Robert Kirkman into where he is today. But this was also the book that helped assist people to go back. Kind of like with the Mark Spears effect, where people are going back to those old Spawn books and picking them up. They started picking up Invincible after they started reading how good Walking Dead was, even though they're two very different stories. Walking Dead's over here, Invincible's over here. They're not the same thing.
Right.
But it just proved how much of a good writer Robert Kirkman really is. To this day, he's still writing some really good stuff. And what can we say about Walking Dead that hasn't been said before, man?
Yeah, I got into this because of the show. I don't own any of the issues, but what I'm waiting for is, I know they just did the deluxe versions where they colored them. So once those are all out, I'll probably go back and get the collection of them and read through them all then.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm not a fan I'm not going to say I'm not a fan. I've never read much of the Walking Dead stuff, but I can tell you that my friends that do collect the Walking Dead are diehard, pretty hardcore fans of the Walking Dead. So it seems like the people that are into it are really, really into it.
Oh, I read it. I read it plenty of times. What makes The Walking Dead so good, and again, we kind of have this now with Last of Us as well, because Last of Us is very much kind of like in the same type of world with Walking Dead, in the same concept. But what made Walking Dead such an important book was that it was one of the first times that it wasn't about the zombies as much. That was a secondary story.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Romero did that to death. Like
but it was secondary to what the story was. The story was about people trying to get back into the real, make world, a good place again. And it's just, you had, colonies being formed, and they were learning more about how to live in this kind of world. And the zombie part was like, okay, we need a zombie, something. The zombies need to do something. And that's kind of where it went. It was more of a story about the people and how they had to rebuild society out of it, which they ultimately did. And that's how the story ended, really, where it's like, no, we're living. This is how we're going to live now. This is our world, and this is how we're going to live. We're moving forward. The zombies are there. We're here. They're always going to be a threat, but we also find out that the humans are even worse than the zombies, which made it even more interesting. Our next book here is another classic. I'm going to say is a classic to me, and that's The Umbrella Academy. However, we're looking at the free comic book day that came out in 2007. The high sell was $540 and 9.8. That was in March of 2019. Last sale of this book was $95 and 9.8. Near mints are going for about $50, while the 9.8 averages out at $95. There's 1,444 copies in the census. This is written by Gerard Way, who is the frontman of My Chemical Romance. It was a free comic book day giveaway. Features the first appearance of the Umbrella Academy and Murder Magician, and it was adapted to a Netflix TV series in 2019. I enjoyed the Netflix series. I have not finished it. I have to go back to it. But I really had fun watching the Umbrella Academy. And I think the comic book, I read the comic book as well. I like the comic book. The artwork's kind of quirky, but I enjoyed the comic book as well.
Yeah, I have the collection of the comics. Haven't read them yet, but I love the show. I've watched all of them. I think we've watched it twice all the way through. The characters were really great. So I'm hoping that translates into the book. And, look at this, a free comic book day book that is worth money again. So
yeah,
keep your eye on those.
Yeah, we've had a few of those you've heard about lately. But no, Gerard Way, I like My Chemical Romance, and I like Gerard Way as a writer. I've read several comic book series that he's written, including I think most recently Paranoid Gardens. And that was a weird series, but it was interesting. I liked it. I was into it. But Gerard Way, I think he's a pretty good writer, whether it be music or comics, and he's talented dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Umbrella Academy. I think it was really cool concept. I like how the story unfolds itself in some way, especially series to series with season to season, and the characters, the violin, the white violin, that character is scary, man. In the comic book, they didn't do her justice in the TV show, but in the comic book, she is scary. You know what I mean? And what they did with her. So it's really good stuff. Let's go to our next one. Lock and Key #1. This came out in 2008 from IDW. High sale of this book was $650 and a 9.9 November of 2017. Last sale of this book was $125 and 9.8. And they go for about $58 near mint, $102 and 9.8 is the average. There's 837 copies. This is the premiere issue of first issue arc, Welcome to Lovecraft, written by Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King. It was adopted into a Netflix TV series that premiered in February 2020. This also has a very low print run, but yet the book is very affordable with 7,560 copies.
Nice. That Joe Hill, he actually has another one that's recently been optioned with Basket Full of Heads.
Yes. And that was for DC Comics too, right? That was a DC comic, Basket Full of Heads.
Yeah, it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What
do you guys think about Lock and Key?
I was getting ready to say I don't know much about Lock and Key though. I've read a little bit of Basket Full of Heads, so I've read some Joe Hill, but I am not familiar with this one. Do you know anything about it, Shane?
Yeah, no, I haven't watched this show, or I've heard of the book, but I've never read it at all.
So I watched the TV show. I read 1 or 2 issues of Lock and Key. Really, the concept of it is you have this mansion. It's like this mansion house that this family was inherited. It was, but there's keys, and the keys unlock certain things that are different. Sometimes it unlocks personalities. Sometimes it unlocks into different worlds. Obviously, there's horror elements into it as well. There's a character that's trying to control other people. So it's a very intriguing concept, and it also goes back to a past story that has happened. With Lock and Key, everything's a little different. Attitudes are changing. Some keys are in the building. Like there was one that was in the back of somebody. So it has some real cool things. It is a tough read, but it is one that is very it's Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King. What do you think? Intricate is probably the good word I could use for it, where it's layered. And I think that's what makes Lock and Key such a powerful story. And of course, the Netflix series is actually really good. I think it has 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken, for it. Worth checking out, worth watching. I've watched it a few times already. I haven't finished it, but I do tend to go back to it. So go check that one out. All right, let's move on to another classic that I'm really happy that's in this list, and that's Saga #1 from 2012 from Image Comics. The high sale of this book is $1,200 and 9.8. That was in July of 2022. Last sale of this book is $212 and 9.8. We're also going for about $82 near mint. 9.8s are now going for about $310. There's currently 5,608 copies in the census. This is an Eisner Award-winning space epic by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. And of course, it features the appearance of two lovers from opposing sides of a two alien race war, Marco and Alana. I read a few issues of Saga, and it is definitely epic.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this one, except for I know that Chris really loves this series and picks it up for his wife, I believe, and they both enjoy it. This is one of those ones that I'll probably get when, I can get a collection of it, because hunting down original issues will be too hard.
Yeah. I have never read Saga, but I know several people that are really into the series. I know that when I first got back into collecting, it was running and then it went on hiatus for a long time.
Yeah, it does that.
Yeah, and then it finally came back. There seems to be big gaps in the series, and I don't know if that has to do with Brian K. Vaughan being such a successful writer, because he's been involved with so many other things, other even television, like he did Lost. Yeah. So he's a very successful writer. But I've never had a chance to read Saga. I've heard so many good things, though.
It also has to do with Fiona Staples because she's the one and only artist behind it. So he writes it, she does the art. They take breaks. They definitely take breaks. So if you guys read Void Rivals, there's a lot of similarities to that.
I love that series.
And it has kind of there's also like an element of Romeo Juliet, but it's also set in a space opera. It's definitely adult. I'll say that much. It is very adult. And the one thing I like that Brian K. Vaughan stated is that this is what you're gonna get. This is it. You're not gonna get a live action movie. It's not gonna be adapted. This is the one book that he says is going to stay that way,
which is weird. So,
him being which is fine. I honestly believe that in his particular instance, I respect that. But once Saga is over, I think that's when the price of this book is going to kind of dip a little bit because, again, there's nothing else. But it is a book that's one of the longest running Image comics as well. You got to keep in mind, Image comics don't last that long. And this is one that did. This one is going. How many issues are it now? I think I can't remember right now, but it is definitely, it's a story, man, and they're telling the story. So,
yeah. I was at a bookstore the other day, and I know that there's already several trades for it out.
Oh yeah, that's how you're gonna be able to read it now, because it'll be very hard to pick up. You know what I mean? And it's another Brian K. Vaughan, Paper Girls. This book came out in 2015 for Image Comics. High sales $280 and 9.8. That was May of 2021. Last sale, would you believe it was $3? And this book on average is $5 near mint. 9.8 is going for $33. This book has 3,293 copies in the census. It's a group of girls that get caught in between two factions of time travelers at war with one another. It was also adapted into a live action series by Amazon. Paper Girls is, I believe it's set in the 80s, so it has a little bit of a Stranger Things vibe to it, but with time travel.
Yeah, it was good. I got a trade of it somewhere. Yeah, I got it over here on my bookshelf. It was a good series. It was another one from Brian K. Vaughan that I enjoyed. And did they ever end up adapting that, or did they abandon the idea?
No, it happened. They did one season, but it was canceled.
Oh, I never saw it. Okay.
So yeah, tape prime. There's no second season coming, unfortunately.
Shows you how much TV I keep up with.
Shane, you know anything about Paper Girls?
No, I've never read it. I've heard of the title, but it's one of those ones that now that I know it's been adapted, I'll watch the first season unless it ends on a cliffhanger, and I'm not going to watch it.
You just go to the comic book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's one of those stories that people love the comic book. They enjoy the comic book, but it never really gained traction the way it did. It did become a TV series, so it gained enough traction that they made it into a TV series. But it just, I don't think it translated as well as they wanted it to. So it was eventually canceled, unfortunately. But it was trying to take up the same momentum from Stranger Things, but with a time travel element. So kind of thinking, Back to the Future kind of way in some way or something like that. My wife read it. She enjoyed it a lot, so she read pretty much all the volumes. Because you were able to pick them up in the library.
Oh,
So
cool.
there you have it. Paper Girls, we're down. We got just 3 more to go, and this one I think we all know. Something's Killing the Children.
Yeah.
Number 1, 2019 from Boom Studios. The high sale of this book is 1,509.8. That was in May of 2021. Last sale was $355 near mint. $404 for the near mint copies. $631 for 9.8 is the average. That's 3,877. This is the first appearance of Erica Slaughter. First appearance of the Oscula type, a monster. Copies were 33,648, and it's currently in development for Netflix. We've talked about this, Shane. So let's talk about it now. Something's Killing the Children. What do we got to say about it?
Well, I think that kind of be considered like your modern day type of Grail book for sure. It's an amazing series. The art has been consistent all the way through because it's the same creative team, and the art fits the story really well. It's obviously like almost written to be done on TV or something. I kind of jumped on the boat a little bit late. I think I have issue 8, and that's as low as I can afford to get right now. But if you haven't caught up, they have a deluxe version I've mentioned before. It's like oversized and has the first 15 issues in it. There's 2 volumes of that so far, which is a great value. Love this book.
Yeah.
How you feel about Something's Killing the Children, Scotty?
I jumped in about the same issue that Shane did, I think, and I went back and picked up a few of the trades. So I read all the way up into the 20s. I stopped reading somewhere in the 20s, and I was also reading House of Slaughter, which I felt like got pretty good at a certain point itself. I jumped off both at a certain point. I'm probably going to lose people after this, but I'm not a big fan of Tynan's writing, so it's not my thing personally. But like Shane said, I can totally see it being a cool TV show if done the right way. But just not.
And
to me, Tynan doesn't always stick the landing, but that's just me.
I would agree with that. The only thing, and I told to Shane about this is that title might be so hard for a sell. You get what I'm saying? To the point that when you talk about it, everybody goes SIKTC, right? To kind of prevent from actually saying it.
Right.
So I don't see the title happening. I feel like they're gonna end up calling it Slaughter something, which it's because of the children aspect of it, right? Like it's gonna be hard to sell something that says killing the children, but that's the concept of the story.
It brings the horror fans in, though. It draws those horror people.
It brings the horror fans in, but it scares the moms.
True.
You get what I'm saying?
It's like, what's killing the children?
Anybody knows about moms that like to write letters, they like to write letters. So you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the thing. It's I feel like they're gonna probably end up calling it House of Slaughter more than anything, which I think kind of defeats the purpose of what the story really is about.
Because
the House of Slaughter is where she comes from. It's not really what the story's about.
Or they could do like the Book of Slaughter or Enter the House of Slaughter or something.
Yeah, they'll probably do something like that. And then they'll say something's killing the children within the show. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like somewhere in the show, something's killing the children. And dun, 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 some crap like that. You know what I mean? I can just see that happening. But definitely one of those books that, looking at it now, 33,000 copies is more than I thought this should be. But people gravitate towards it, and they're not letting it go. That's probably what it is too.
True.
All right, we got 2 more to go, and this one's a great one. Do a Powerbomb #1. This came out in 2022 for Image Comics. The high sell of this book is $80 and 9.8. That was in March of 2023. Last sale of this book, believe it or not, was $3, and it goes for about $7 now. The graded copies go for $80 and 9.8. I was surprised to see that there's only 32 copies in the census, and this is a great story about a pro wrestler living in the shadow of her legendary mother, is approached by a necromancer who invites her to join the grandest and most dangerous tournament of all, Do a Powerbomb. Daniel Warren Johnson won the 2023 Eisner Award for Best Publication for Teens. This story, I know, Shane, you didn't read it yet, but I'm sure you read it, Scotty.
I've read all of Daniel. Well, I'll say I've read most of Daniel Warren Johnson's stuff.
Tell me what your thoughts on Do a Powerbomb, because I love it.
Man, this is a kick-ass book. Daniel Warren Johnson can do no wrong. I'm a fan of anything that he touches. The man has brought back Transformers in an amazing way. What he did for Beta Ray Bill was freaking awesome. I just love Daniel Warren Johnson.
Yeah. And Shane, I know you picked up some copies, but you never have the chance to pick up the first one yet, have you?
Yeah, exactly. So I have all the rest of them when we did our spotlight on Daniel Warren Johnson. And yeah, I can't wait to read it. So I'm just waiting for that first issue so I can add it in and then be reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, this story, this is one of the stories I read when I started getting back into comics. I picked it up and I was like, I was easily hooked into it. It caught everything I wanted in a comic book, and it took my love for wrestling and put it into a comic book, and did it in a respectful way where it was part of the story rather than it kind of did to the tropes of other wrestling comic books do. Man, it was so good, man. Great story, great storytelling. Like you said, Daniel Warren Johnson is becoming one of the best writers today. If not the best writer at the moment.
Like, I even like his art. I even really dig his art style. I think it's cool as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He does it all pretty much, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes him cool. And he has Mike Spicer to help him out too a lot of the times when he needs somebody to do it. All right, it's time for our final book in this list. And it is the book, like, I love Do a Powerbomb. I really, really do love it. But when I read this story and I read the concept behind this story, I was instantly hooked. 8 Billion Genies, 2022, Image Comics. High sale of this book is $235 and 9.8. That was in August of 2022. Last sale of this book was $15 near mint. $14 goes for the Raws. $88 for 9.8. There's currently 1,254 copies in the census. Chaos ensues after 8 billion genies grant everyone in the world one wish. Amazon secured the rights for the movie and other potential projects, and it's going to be done by Seth Rogen's team in Point Grey and will be adapted for a film with Rodney Rothman, who wrote Into the Spider-Verse, writing the screenplay.
Love it, Scotty. It's awesome.
So, Shane, have you read 8 Billion Genies?
Oh, yeah. I have the oversized hardcover. I have the originals. This is a comic that when I have people over that aren't comic people, I give them this to read. I love this story, and you're right. You read the first issue and you're hooked. You got to see what happens. And you're just exposed to the whole kind of story you think, and then it just goes crazy from there.
Yeah, just a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fun from the first issue on. I got to meet Charles Soule at one of the last local cons I went to, and I already had some books signed by him, but I picked up this 8 Billion Genies plush, and it's got the tag. Hold on, let's see. Well, I'll show. Where is it? There's the tag signed by both of them on the inside.
Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah, I got to meet them, and that was cool. It's a great series. I haven't read Lucky Devils, but I'm hearing good things about it as well. So
it's getting really good, Scotty. It's worth a read for sure.
Really cool.
So, like I said, I picked up do a power bomb, and I picked up 8 Billion Genies when I first started coming back into comics. And do a power bomb was very emotional to me. Reading it because of the beats that Daniel Warren Johnson was doing. But what was Charles Soule was doing and Ryan Brown was doing with this story was giving me a story that was like totally not what I was expecting, but at the same time, what I was expecting, if that makes sense.
It's out there. It's in left field.
So it comes up with this concept of everybody getting a genie, and he's like, okay, everybody gets a genie, but it's how the creative process comes along with it. How some people blow away their wish, and then some people were like holding on to their wish for dear lives. And then what's even more cool is how he took the government's approach to it, which was crazy. Where the president is like, no, you're holding on to your wish for me, and things like that. I was like, wait a minute, that's crazy. You know what I mean? So there's power in having this wish, but you only have the one wish.
Yep.
I thought it was so creative, so inventive, and I also liked how it was a time lapse comic too, right? So it was like the first 8 hours, the first 8 days, the first 8 years, and then eventually we get to the far future, and it's like this is just the norm now, which was really cool, really creative, great approach. I can't wait to see what this looks like in film.
Oh man, yeah.
And how they're gonna do it, because are they gonna make it a serious story, or are they gonna make it kind of comedic? It really isn't a comedy, but it has comedy elements to it.
Definitely.
But it has potential to be something like the next Walking Dead because of its style. I could really see that being that. So if you see this book for $14, pick it up.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, pick it up.
Very least,
because you could potentially have a big book in front of you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we finally did it, guys. We reached the end of our list here. We went through 25 comics, man. That was a long one, guys. We went extra time for this one, but I kind of knew that was gonna happen.
It's all good.
What do you guys think? Was it a fun list or what?
Yeah, it was a pretty good list, man. I liked it.
Let me know what you think of this list. Let me know in the comments which books you have. Yeah. Thanks for watching the Indie Comics. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more comic content. Check out these other videos for even more insight, and I'll see you at the next one. Excelsior.